GMGP, good morning, good people. Y'all could have been anywhere in the world, but y'all decided to wake up with us. You're sick. You're sick in the head. There's a lot of fantasy football shows out there, but I promise y'all, they not like us. Brock Bowers, you look a little quicker than fast. What does that even mean? Redraft, Dynasty, best ball, high stakes, we got you covered. And that's MVS and Justin Watson with some of the dopest tools designed to help you cancel out the noise and dominate your leagues. If there's a white wide receiver named Antoine, sign me up. Maybe it's cultural. I don't know. In season or off season, rain, sleet, hail, and snow, comma, semicolon, period, next sentence, to bring you the most actionable and entertaining content on YouTube. You don't go buy the dip on the Titanic.
Quarterback that you love, D-Bro. One of the best values in fantasy football.
Prop bets with my man JRich.
Is that
yes? Let's go! So wipe the crust out of your eye, get you a cup of coffee. It's time to wake y'all asses up with Ray
and Jay
in the morning.
My God.
How good is
Dude,
he? How good is he? Let's get it. GMGP. It is Monday, September 2nd, 2024. Hit the air horns, JRich. New month, baby. New month. Same gas. Y'all decided to wake y'all asses up. We wasn't even supposed to be here today. But my guy, 300 yards from Tet McMillan, 400 plus from Jackson Dart, Will Howard balling out, Cam Ward renaissance. Damn it, we got to talk about it. I wanted to sleep in today and wish everybody out there, all our military service men, women, everybody happy Labor Day. But here we are, baby, because we love you. So I appreciate each and every eye, each and every ear in the building. Y'all know we're going to do it mid-show. Hit the thumbs up button, like the content, subscribe to the channel. We coming with that heat, baby. 2024, DD taking shit over. Who we got in the building? Greg Oswald. Oh, yeah, big dog. You know we're going to talk about that man, Ollie. OG2. We're going to talk about Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State. We got Dynasty Logic in the building. Yeah, Jimbo, I pump faked you a little bit. Jimbo in the building. Shout out to my dog, Jimbo, Marlon, Ricardo, Zach in the building, Jacob, Thomas, Richie, Jeff. Good morning, good people. JRich, where you at? Jordan, JRich, get in the show, baby. It's Wake Up with Ray and Jay. Where you at? What's happening with you, Jay? How you doing, baby?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm here, right? You called me yesterday. You said, hey, do you want to do a show? And I said, not really, but I am a man of the people, so I am here, right? Look at you. See, you're laughing like that's not the case. And what? Oh, gotta get the lip on. Gotta make sure the lips looking good. Yeah, but I do want to give you a shout out because we do not have a show until Wednesday. I need everybody, whether you are live or you are watching after the fact, to please wish Ray G a happy birthday because it's his birthday tomorrow. So I do want to give you a shout out for that, Ray. It is your birthday. I forget how old you are. Is it 38?
I'll be 38, man. 38 years young.
Look at me.
38. Yeah, I'm not quite a man yet. I'm not quite 40, but I'm pushing it. 38 tomorrow. Yeah, man.
Yeah, because Thor Nysham just turned 40. But I wanted to wish you a happy birthday on the show. Before your birthday instead of after the fact, since we are here. But it was a great weekend. Lots of great football, tons of great performances, a lot of overreactions. I got a text in our group chat that said Cam Ward is not an NFL QB. But that quickly was walked back, and we won't say who that was. But I'm very excited to be here, and I'm very excited, Ray, for you to set me straight on this college football season because there's a lot to get through today.
You have been throwing a lot of subtle shots since the rebrand. Just know I got your ass. Just know I got you, my friend. But listen, we got a lot to talk about. There's a lot of things I want to discuss about this weekend of college football. Some amazing performances, some shitty performances, some concerning ones, some where you've got to kind of temper the expectations moving forward. It was against the Furmans and the Eastern Washington, Western Kentucky Wildcats the third. We get it. It's week one of college football. Yet, some of the principles that not just we on this show have talked about, Jay, Scott Connor and I on Destination Chills. Over the past couple of Sundays, we've continued to talk about the value of these picks in 2025, how this year is going to impact that class. And we thought, what better way to kick off the NFL season week? Like this week, we've got NFL back, colleges in full swing. Hell, we got a game tonight, JRich in the collegiate game. I'm not excited to watch DJU, but it's college football and it's back. But why not just combine Wake Up, Destination Chill? Scott Connor's on the show. Where's Scott at? Get Scott in the building. Air horn Scott. Let's get Scott in the building. What's happening with you, baby? I'm going to go get my coffee, too, while y'all do the greetings and salutations.
Yeah, what is good to the good people? I noticed the just the spiciness from JRich since the rebrand. Since this show is now Wake Up with Ray and Jay, it is just absolute fire coming from JRich. Ray is not here, but he said everything that I would have said. Good morning to everybody. Labor Day. Give the salute to all the people. And it is funny. It is funny that of all the takes that Ray had this weekend in the chat, because Ray is a huge college football fan. Of all of us, he is the one that's sitting down and watching every single college game like we do probably the NFL. And that Cam Ward take, I'm pretty sure as soon as he put that in the chat, as soon as you put it in there, Ray, he just blew up the rest of the game. And it was from Cam Ward is struggling to this is not a good team, really, to the second half was just Cam Ward is a Heisman favorite.
So is this why we called me on the show before my birthday to talk about the ISO text that I sent our group? I was inebriated. I was having a good time. I wasn't really paying attention, but I'm tapped in and I'm locked in now to screw y'all. The hell with y'all. Let's get this show started. So did I interrupt? Sorry, Scott, I came back. Did I interrupt your greetings? Are you done? And were y'all just shitting on me for that Cam Ward take? Which one?
No. We were just talking about that was the take from the weekend that it may end up being the correct take because just because he is in the Heisman race does not mean he is an NFL quarterback. Like there's two different arguments there, but you might have just jinxed him positively, Ray, to being the best quarterback Miami's had since what? Gino Torretta, Ken Dorsey, Vinny Testaverde. I mean, we're going way back, at least 20 years, but maybe the U is back with Cam Ward. So we'll see. Right. Let's get into it.
I think Brad Kaya is their all-time leading passer. Right? Believe so.
He's better on TikTok than he was in the football game.
Fair. Okay. Well, let's talk about it, man. We had a monster weekend of college football. And Scott, one of the things that you and I have talked about, my friend, on Destination Chill a month and a half ago, talked about the value of the 2025 picks being inflated. Not because the class was, you looked at it on its face value and this was going to be the best rookie draft prospect class we've ever seen, but for a combination of things. This hype and enthusiasm around college football. JRich, we continue to talk about conference realignment, how the impact of the NCAA game has exposed more people to the college game. And I don't know if y'all saw it this weekend, but as I'm watching social media, more and more people were talking about college prospects, retweeting stuff, sharing clips. So we get to Saturday, and there was some big performances from players that we've talked about on this channel quite a bit. Probably none bigger than this player. Jay, can you give us the Tetairoa McMillan stat line from Saturday, please?
So he finished the game with 10 receptions, 304 yards, and 4 touchdowns. You can see it in the clips here if you're watching on YouTube. A lot of long plays, a lot of yards after the catch, and a lot of cornerbacks that simply could not cover the wide receiver one or expected wide receiver one in the class. But I think the best question when you talk about Tet McMillan, Ray, is he the #1 overall prospect, period, including quarterbacks in Superflex leagues?
Well, that's really the question. And let's just preface this whole conversation by saying, folks, we understand and we recognize one game, 1 week, most of the teams are playing inferior opponents, even though we did get some good matchups. But this is how ADV, artificial dynasty value, is built. It's built early in the season, how players performed well, and that sentiment seemingly carries through that player throughout the season unless something drastic happens. So it's just 1 week, but I want to monitor this every week. What's the temperature out there on a certain player, on a certain position group? Scott, I'm going to ask you. You've seen the clips. You know the stat line. You understand where dynasty gamers and fantasy gamers are gravitating towards from a positional standpoint, the valuable ones. Today, what are your thoughts about McMillan at least sitting as the #1 overall pick, regardless of format, when you're talking about dynasty rookie draft picks in the 2025 class?
Well, I think we have to go back. It's only September 2nd. We're only technically 2 weeks into the college season. But as you mentioned, ADV, and this is what we talked about all summer on Destination Chill, was the ADV being created by the new college football game, being created by Underdog releasing a best ball college tournament, 3 of them. But then it continues with whether Tet McMillan goes on and has 4 more games like this, whether he breaks records, whether he does stuff that we've never seen. I mean, it's going to be hard for him to put up the same stats as what we saw from some of the LSU guys in the past. Like, you can't just say, oh, yeah, he's going to have one of those stat lines where he goes for 1,900 yards and 20 touchdowns or something like that. But at this point, he's already checked the box. Whether he's wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, like, he's already being set aside as, I know that guy's a dude. And people are going to think that. Whether he goes in the top 5, the top 10, whether he goes to this landing spot or that landing spot, even after 1 week where everybody's played, I think you can chalk him up as that's going to be representative of a valuable slot come 2025. And you'd probably take him as the number 1 pick. Jay asked, is he the number 1 prospect over the quarterbacks? Right now, sure. But the beauty of it is, Jay, you don't have to make any picks right now.
Yeah.
So if you have him in a Devy league or you're sitting on a top 5 pick and you need a receiver, you probably can just chalk this one up as he's already in that category as the hell yeah category, right? Like, you're going to get a stud player that also has the ADV and the draft capital and the pedigree, everything attached to it, and he just checks the box. We're going to see some QBs enter that mix. We can talk about some of those guys later on in the show, but I don't know if there is a name or 2 or 3 where I say that is the dude. But all we want is a couple of them to check the boxes. So then when we get to when we're all in Mobile for the Senior Bowl, we already have 4, 5, 6 names that are locked, right? That is what anchors the class. Then the class gets built out on some of the more hype, some of the more performances at the Combine and the Senior Bowl, and that's where the ADV continues to build. So for me, I don't look at things like just the player. I'm just looking at it as he's going to be seen as a stud in this class, and he's already checked the box after 1 game, and that is powerful.
JRich, it's a very rational take right there. That is probably the level-headed approach. But fuck all that, man. JRich, what are we looking at when we're looking at 304, Jay, and I hear people, well, let's see what he does versus real deep. I'm telling you, the same thing is going to happen. I mean, he's done this since his freshman season. From the moment he stepped on the field, P5 football, he was the most dominant player out there. Even with the great Jacob Cowing, it was very clear who the best NFL caliber talent is. He's bigger than he was last year. For those of you who don't know, he barely practiced this summer because he was recovering from, I believe, foot surgery or some sort of injury that he had throughout the off. I didn't think he was even going to play. And then he goes out there and he looks like that. JRich, what type of player are we looking like? I put out on this channel, you can go back a month and a half ago, his route distribution, what he did. He's not Mike Evans to me. I know a lot of people have said that.
Yeah, DP
he's a lot more graceful than Mike Evans. I believe he's a little more explosive than Killer Mike, and Mike is a Hall of Famer. But his game was different. He is a cross for me of like an AJ Green, Brandon Marshall type prospect, and you see that with his size, his fluidity. What do you think, how people are going to react to McMillan going into, and we talked about a specific player from 2024 if things don't go well early, how the Dynasty community is going to react to Tet. JRich, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up Scott's point about the play, right, and how he plays. And in my head, right, it's looking at 2 players. Is he Jamar Chase, where, Scott's saying he's locked in, he's going to be a top pick, going to be probably the wide receiver 1. And how close is he to Marvin Harrison Jr., where regardless of what he does, he is going to be a top draft pick and probably the wide receiver 1. I think that's the realm of possibilities we're looking at for Tet, and it just depends on how he plays. But the argument against Tet is the Big 12, right? And the conference play and who he's playing against. It's not the Big 10, it's not the SEC. And that's a fair knock to some people. Some people it's not because of how much he dominated. 10 receptions, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. But I think, when you look at how he plays, how he wins, the hardest part for the comp is the yak ability. Because a lot of these big guys, he's listed 6'5", 212. He's probably at least 6'4", 205, right? Somewhere in that realm, which is still ridiculously big. And when I was talking to you, Ray, I said he's kind of like a worse version of Julio Jones at his absolute peak because Julio is so explosive, so dominant at the catch point, but he can do all of the things that Julio can do to a lesser degree, and it doesn't look as sexy when he does it, but it's just as effective, right? And so when you look at Tet, I think he's going to be a dominant wide receiver, probably an alpha, probably a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. The question just remains is how high is that value insulation? And like you're saying, Scott, do you hold on to that the whole year if you got it, or do you hold on to that 101 expecting it to be Tet McMillan today?
I'll stop by saying this. he's going to be there, barring some catastrophic injury. Like I guarantee you he'll be a top 10 pick. So do with that what you will. I've seen plenty of years where a highly touted prospect from this year's current class, 2024, things don't go as planned, and then people fade him into oblivion next year. There's going to be a real possibility where one of the rookie wide receivers that we are coveting does not start off fast, and you will see people as we inch closer to 2025. Oh, I'd rather that McMillan over insert high rookie 2024 value name here in 2024. I want to stick with the skill position players before we really talk to Scott. You talk about what makes or breaks a class is the strength of the quarterback. We're going to talk about that after we go through some more skill position players. Just a couple of names that I want to throw out there that just looked dominant and looked ready to go from a skill position standpoint. Jay, outside of Tet McMillan, I don't know if there was another individual performance better than Ashton Jeanty, running back out of Boise State, was incredible. Over 250 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, compact runner, explosive, can catch the ball, was a converted wide receiver. Ashton Jeanty went off and probably could have scored even more in this. It was a back and forth game between Boise State. But this is a running back where you've got a lot of people in Georgia Southern, a lot of people, Jay, including Dane Brugler, who have him as the RB1 in this class. For me, I had him as RB2 or 3. I think he and Judkins were tied for me. Top 3 running back in this class. Ashton Jeanty, JRich, what do you think about him and how Dynasty gamers are going to treat this smaller running back from Boise State once we get to the process?
I do think he's going to be not forgotten about, but discounted because of the Boise State bias, right? I don't think he's going to get probably what he deserves. There'll be a lot of people who like him, but I don't think there's a chance that he's going to pass Ollie Gordon to be RB1 when it's all said and done. I think Ollie Gordon's going to come out, he's going to smash, going to perform great once again. And I think the higher profile name, and we always talk about the ADV. I think Ollie Gordon has that, right? I think Quinshot Judkins potentially also has that. And you look at what Henderson and Judkins did. They were both fine. I thought Henderson was a little bit better, but you look at what Jeanty's going to do. 6 touchdowns this week. He's not going to do that every week, but he's probably going to have a 25, 30 touchdown season this year. But the question remains is, can he ultimately supplant someone for RB1? I don't know if he's going to get quite there, but he'll be damn close. He'll probably be a top 3 running back when it's all said and done. And this performance only cements the fact that he should be a top running back in the class. And for me, at least, I'm excited because we're going to get a lot of RBs to replace some of these older guys that are going to get spots. Like, I think this is the year where, we talk about loading up on picks. If you need running backs, this could be one of those years where those picks really do pay off if you need running backs.
Yes. And Scott, I know you saw the numbers, the enthusiasm. You see our guy, Gump, man. Paul is phenomenal. Make sure you're following him on X, Gump7285, doing a lot of stuff sports betting-wise, but he's very tapped into the Devy game. He says, Ashton Jeanty, RB1, easily the best dual threat running back in this class. Scott, I think for you, my question to you is the bigger overall philosophical sort of take on the position as a whole. You saw JRich talk about Ollie Gordon. We got some clips from Ollie as well. I mean, he's
so good.
He's very good. He's very big. He's very good. He can catch the ball. He's not super fast. Let's just be real. He's not going to go out there and run some 4.3, 4.4. It just feels just like an old school NFL. I can turn around and give him the ball 25. You know what he feels like? He feels like what Najee Harris was coming out of Alabama. That he kind of feels like Najee Harris, a big body built in this old prehistoric running back factory that can just go absorb 30 touches a game, right? Is he? I don't think he's not Todd Gurley. He's not one of those transcendent talents. Maybe he's and I don't.
Can he be Melvin Gordon?
I don't say this in a negative way at all. And I know people will hear the name and that's a shitty name. But can he be like a little better version of what Brian Robinson is? Like a running back that can get to. Damn. I know it sounds not, but I'm trying to be realistic here. He's not Todd Gurley. He doesn't have that level of speed and athleticism. So you got to put him in just that workhole Najee Harris, Brian Robinson role. But he's a very good collegiate running back. So Scott, amongst him, you got Judkins, you've got Travion Henderson, who played well this past weekend. There are a lot of running backs. We watched Woody Marks last night. I think he's going to be a name. His reception profile from Mississippi State is going to lend to some opportunity in fantasy. But Omarion Hampton, just the RB class in general, Scott, this is good for us in rookie drafts, right? That we've got multiple options that we could talk through from the running back position, right?
Well, first, I got to correct JRich. I mean, Doug Martin, Jeremy McNichols, Ian Johnson. I mean, come on, this Boise State pedigree is going to be good for Ashton Jeanty. But to your question, Ray, I see a lot of comments in the chat just blowing up. We need an RB renaissance. This is going to be the next 2017. I hate to break it to everybody. It's never happening.
Oh, boy.
It will never happen again to where running backs are going to be treated like they were in the past. The odds that we have another 2017 where we have, 7, 8, 9 running backs still kicking from 2017 that are leading their backfields today. Come on.
It's nuts, man.
Right? We've talked about it how many times. This looks like a great class. You mentioned a bunch of names, but how many of them are built like Joe Mixon? How many of them are built like Christian McCaffrey, where you can just bank that 8 years into their career, they're still healthy and kicking and leading a backfield? Like, not even a guy where they've drafted another one of them along the way. I mean, Joe Mixon has staved off competition his whole career.
Right.
So to think we're just going to get that, I think that's a pipe dream. However, back to the argument of the ADV. Does everybody in the chat and in your leagues think we're going to get that? Is this going to be, man, after 2025, 6 of the top 10 dynasty running backs are going to be rookies from 2025? Could we get the power of that class? And I think with what you've mentioned, I mean, Ollie and Jeanty already, like, how many of them have checked the box? And you know it's coming for the way Nick Singleton looked. You know it's coming for him.
Yes.
You know it's coming for the Ohio State guys at some point.
Yeah.
But, like, it's going to be there where we get to the end of the year and we go, all right, this may be the class where we have, what do you think, Ray? 5 running backs drafted in the first 2 rounds? Is that potential this year?
I think
6?
minimum. Yes, 5 or 6.
Okay.
I think we can.
Okay.
I'd feel confident about saying that right now. 5 or 6, yes.
And that is bucking the historical trend in terms of the way things have been going with running back draft capital. If we get 5 or 6 of these guys that are drafted in the top 50, generally that holds more weight with a lot of the people out there that don't analyze the dynasty game like we do. They're still going to sit and go, draft capital, man. That guy's got to be a day 2 pick. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm going to discount him. Now, you and I, we sit there and go, okay, if that guy was in a good spot and he goes late round 3, I'm not going to hold it against him, right? But there's a lot of people that go, man, the pedigree. That's an early second rounder. That means he is just better than that guy that went in the mid-3rd. And I think we're going to get that, which will just bring everything together with this class. I still wonder, and I want to ask Jay this, because I know he's not as in-depth in the dynasty space as Ray and I. How will the perception of your league mates be, though, Jay? Not just everyone's going to be excited to get their hands on Nick Singleton and Quinshon Judkins, right? If they have the 106, they're going to be excited to draft one of these guys.
Yeah.
What will it mean when it actually means giving up something else of value relative to these picks? I'm not talking about, man, I'd love to have those first-round rookie picks. But now I'm trading you my Garrett Wilson. I'm trading you my Justin Herbert. Whatever the asset is, where will that line be? Or where people will be going, okay, now I'm willing to start give up a quarterback or a wide receiver. That is the litmus test of the new running back age. Will there actually be people willing to give up the flexible young assets at other positions for the running backs? Or is it just going to be everybody that's faded running back for 5 years is really happy that this class is good because they can add a couple to their roster? What do you say?
Yeah, so Scott, I did want to give you a shout out because you did drop your pod this morning on the DD radio feed, so make sure you check that out. You're any running back on a 53. And I think the question and the reason why I brought this up is because that premise is off of late round running backs, right? But there is still a mix of running backs that do matter. The Jahmyr Gibbses, the Breece Halls, the Bijan Robinsons. And I think to your point, people are already bringing up 2017 where there was true difference-making running backs, top 6, top 9 almost when you talk about the whole class and what they ended up becoming. And the question will be, is can this class deliver us difference-making running backs? And I believe that the consensus, and when it's all said and done, people are going to believe that they are getting the next Bijan Robinson, the next Jahmyr Gibbs, the next whoever running back you want to name. You know, Ray, you brought up Todd Gurley, even Melvin Gordon when they were in the same class. Like, I think this will be a class where they'll get the draft capital, they'll have the production profiles, they'll look good in drills, and they're going to be drafted very high. And people will believe that they're getting true difference-making running backs. And I think that's the problem, is that's when people will be willing to trade away their good assets in the NFL for some of these guys, and they were going to miss on some of those prospects. But I believe the hype is going to be there when it's all said and done. This is a very good running back class, and especially with the drought we've been on for running backs, we've had a couple good ones. But it's been so bad, people will overhype it even more because people need running backs, because ultimately, at the end of the day, they score the most points for fantasy football. And if you have the right ones, it matters.
That's the thing, Jay. And Greg Oswald put this in the chat. Hold on real quick. I don't like being on the outside, so Jay, we're going to have to move you. There. All right, Greg Oswald said this right here in the chat, right? Greg said this in the chat, and I think this was directed more towards Scott's comment. Whether this class has the longevity or not is irrelevant, in my opinion. The RB landscape is gross right now, and we're getting a large influx of both quantity and quality backs. This is where I definitely feel them, right? Whether this class becomes 2017, there's two parts to this story, right? It's not just about the talent in this upcoming 2025 class. It's about the existing talent in the NFL that is diminishing from the running back position. You look across the board, Kamara's and the Mixons and the Elliots, there's only so much longer you can continue to trot out James Conner and think you're going to have success. So it's almost like the perfect combination of talent and age phasing out of the NFL that is going to make, Scott, regardless if this class is seen and proven to be better than 2017, I feel what Greg is saying, and this is what I've been talking about. This is why you get those picks. It has nothing to do with is Omarion Hampton or Donovan Edwards, are they going to be better than Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook? That's not the point. The point is Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook are old now, and it's time to start thinking about which guys are cycling to the NFL, and you've got a class of very talented running backs that do have the size to profile like a traditional, in quotes, bell cow type running back. Will that happen? I do not know. I would probably bet against having a class full of Hall of Fame running backs or Hall of Fame caliber running backs. But I think it is the perfect storm of old shit in the NFL becoming old, and we need some new talent at the position. And even some of those fringy level, like, do you feel great about that Aaron Jones on your roster in Dynasty? Nobody feels good. You feel like he could, any minute, it could just be over with Aaron Jones, as good as he is. So we're looking for players, and I promise you, some of the dog shit that we're currently propelling up right now, there's guys from 2025 better than the stuff that we're chasing right now in the Jerome Fords, in some of the Rico Dowdles and shit like it. They are better. They are more talented than some of the guys that are currently receiving an opportunity in the NFL right now. Any other?
I think it's just. Scott. I think it's just it's important to. And how many times do we talk about this? But I think it's going to be even more important than ever with this class. I hear all of that. But the bottom line is going to be, if you have these 2025 picks, what is the actual market? Because I think you can also say, with a diminishing old crop of running backs, right? You have to do the math on, all right, do I want Ollie Gordon that's going to cost me Malik Neighbors to get him, right? That's what I have to trade to get him.
Yep.
Or can I get Joe Mixon on the last legs of his career for a third-round pick? That's the real question. Now, some leagues, you're going to see, if you get in a league with a lot of me's, guess what I'm never going to do? Overpay for the rookie pick. So in the case where your league is going to be much more reasonable, then I think you do have to still do this analysis of, all right, now I'm excited about this class. But for me, a lot more of the pick value is going to be supplementing teams that I've just gone absolute shitball at running back for the last 5 years. I'm excited to get my hands on a potential next Breece Hall or next Jahmyr Gibbs. Because you know what? The way I treat the position, I've never been in a position to trade for one of those guys because I would never pay the price. Yeah. So I think it's really being able to understand your league too, because I hear all this about excitement for the picks. But then you're the one and you collect all these first, and then I have half of the first round next year. And then I go out there and I try to trade him, and I go, hey, I'd love to get Garrett Wilson, and I'd love to get this quarterback, and then the league goes, nah, we'll just fade running back again, and we'll all just punt this class, and then you're stuck drafting. Jay, are you excited to draft 5 rookie running backs with all your rookie picks? Or are you hoping, man, I think I want to leverage that into some different type of value? So just be able to look back and understand, just truly try to measure how much your league is going to be excited for these picks, because you still don't want to draft all of the players. I'll just say that.
And I'm going to say this: there will be names outside of the top 3 or 4 big names that are freaking awesome. One of the names that people don't know about, Jonah Coleman. If you've never seen Jonah Coleman play, my goodness, I'm just going to say, very, very talented running back group. Trevor Etienne didn't play this weekend. There's a lot of guys. It's going to be an interesting position to follow and watch. But I definitely want to get to the big guns, and hopefully we've got some time to sort of put together our community big board on the show. So y'all know what it is. We got over 1,300 people woke up with us. Jay, Scott, they're here. Y'all got to hit the like button. Hit that thumbs up, like the button. We'll
waking
be right back
up,
after
I
this
think,
break.
would be the correct one.
Yeah, okay. Wait, what is it? Waking up?
Waking up, yes.
Okay, all right. Well,
they've already woken up, I guess, if you want to say that.
Hit the thumbs up button right now and comment. Appreciate everybody tapping in. Thank you for hitting that thumbs up button. Like, comment, and subscribe. You heard JRich at the beginning of the show talk about Destination Dynasty. That is Scott Connor's signature show. Drops on our main podcast feed every Monday. He dropped an episode. Make sure you check out that. Shane Says, and a trade show on the channel as well from this past weekend. But y'all, we all know that the rookie class, you're going to have dope running backs every year. You're going to have awesome receivers. But the strength of the class is the QB position. And this is the position fantasy football in general has been very bearish on all summer for reasons unbeknownst to me, because nobody even knows who hell half of the damn players are. It's a piss poor narrative that a lot of people who don't know what the hell they're talking about, they throw out there to sound smart or to perceive that there's some analysts, but they haven't a damn clue about anything and how this thing works, right? Go back to last year and find me a Jaden Daniels inside of the first round, a Bo Nix inside of the first. It didn't exist. J.J. McCarthy, Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors. And if you think I'm joking, go do a YouTube search. So we've continued to say, be patient with this class. There are a plethora of quarterback options out there. And week 1, Jay, so far, so good, JRich, from some of the big guns. We talked about one of the guys at the very beginning of the show, Cam Ward. Incredible performance from Miami this weekend. Played really well. I know I have said that I don't think he is that highly caliber NFL prospect type. It was a good game. Florida's not a good team, but he performed. I'm still skeptical on Cam Ward, but damn it, week 1, he balled out. He balled out. I cannot take anything from him. You've got Cam Ward, who played very well. Last night, we saw a battle between Garrett Nussmeier's LSU Tigers and USC Lincoln Riley and Miller Moss. Garrett Nussmeier put a lot of good stuff on tape this past weekend versus USC, but was bested by Miller Moss, who they tried to replace earlier this offseason, but his bowl game performance, confidence in the team, Miller Moss went out there, and there are people, Scott, and I know you didn't watch this game, there are people who say of all the quarterbacks who took the field in week 1, Miller Moss was by far the most impressive, more impressive than Beck, Shedeur, Quinn, Jackson, all of them. What he did versus LSU on a neutral site in prime time, first real career start. There are people out there who say Miller Moss was the best one that performed this past weekend. So, Jay, did you watch any of the LSU-USC game? Your thoughts on Miller Moss, Garrett Nussmeier, and then talk about Cam Ward.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely surprised, right? I expected Nussmeier to look significantly better than Moss. Again, part of it is experience and what you had told me about Garrett Nussmeier as well. But I think to that point, I thought Miller Moss absolutely outplayed Nussmeier. I thought some of the throws that he made were absolutely ridiculous. Nussmeier made some great throws as well. But when you talk about quarterback play, especially in that system, I thought that Miller Moss had to do a little bit more than Nussmeier personally. And I think when it's all said and done, we may go and look at Nussmeier as the better quarterback, but Moss really surprised. I think he should definitely be on people's radar. Cam Ward, he looked really good. He was 5th in QBR on the week, which was great for him. But I think to your point, we've been up and down with Cam Ward a lot. Like, how many times are we going to peg him at the top and then he kind of falls back down the wayside? I think it's great for him to be playing in the ACC, higher profile conference. Getting a win in the Swamp is huge. But as a Gators fan, the Gators are horrible. Like, this is not a competitive football team in any sense of the word. But it was great for Miami to get a big win because they had been struggling. He was pegged as the guy to take this franchise, or take this school, better said, to the next level. And he's definitely shown he has the ability to do that. The question is, can he do that for an entire season and win the ACC, get to the playoff? We'll see. But I think it was a great start from all three of these quarterbacks. But Moss, I think, was the most impressive because of what I expected going in.
Scott, any thoughts on Ward? And I want to keep the focus on Moss and Nussmeier, because I think what's refreshing for me is we're entering into a cycle of college football where there are fresh new names. It's not CJ Stroud and Bryce Young and Anthony. These are new names. So everyone's trying to sort of figure out, like, who's the real deal from who's just a good collegiate quarterback. And I know you weren't able to watch a ton of this game, Scott, but you're no stranger to Nussmeier. You know Miller Moss's story, having to back up Caleb Williams, and you are very aware of Cam Ward. So some of these fresh new names of quarterback prospects that we are going to track throughout the season, what's this do for you? This should be exciting that there are some new names getting tossed into the mix, whether they withstand and they're there at the end. There's a very good chance Garrett Nussmeier and Miller Moss don't even declare for 2025, and they ball out, come back for another season. But just talk about what the replenishment does of adding new names to the mix to strengthen a perceived weak class at the position.
Yeah, for me, it has been, and maybe this is speaking to what you've talked about for a couple months, is the popularity of college football, the promotion of the players. It does feel like, if you're just looking at this, because I am a football fan that is a college football fan, but I also zoom out when I'm looking at it from a dynasty perspective. You guys know I'm much less focused on the player names themselves. I'm looking at like macro big picture of the quarterback class. And I think it was nice. What this class did for me was it delivered some new names, like you mentioned. Even if it's just Miller Moss and Nussmeier checked to the box to where now they are on the radar. Both these teams probably are still going to be in the mix to get into the playoff. So it's not like one loss kills you like the past. No. Like, both of them could still be in the mix to where the hype continues to build. But we also saw some resurgence of some other names. I mean, everyone knew Carson Beck and Shedeur. But now you saw, you check the box with Jalen, Milroe on the new offense in Bama, right? Like, you feel good about that. Jalen Daniels coming back for Kansas. That's another one. Drew Allar coming back from the dead. It looks like he actually has maybe some weapons this year. So I think there's a lot more quarterbacks on the radar. The bigger story for me for the position was the guys that didn't look good. I think there's a couple names you can highlight that were almost losers to where you're going, okay, they're not even on the radar anymore. Connor Weigman might be one that's not on the radar anymore. Yeah. Like, that's one where you're like, that's a big loser, not because he's any worse of a prospect, but because all the other guys, Quinn and Milroe, that they check the box. I know it was a different opponent, but I think the point is I can't remember a year where we're also starving for more quarterbacks like we have in the past. Like, we're at the same kind of spot. We have a drought since last year's class. I mean, helped boost it up a little bit, but we'll still see on them. But I am intrigued by the fact there are so many names. I can give you 15 names right now I'm interested in. All of them are going to declare? No. All of them going to be in the mix to get the draft capital necessary? No. But I'm excited just for, like, without knowing the names, we probably have 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the first round that people are going to be excited about. What does that mean relative to everybody else? We'll see, but it was a successful week. I'm just going through the names going, okay, that name's back from the dead. That name's back from the dead. And that's a good thing if you're trying to pump up the value of the 25 picks. So that's what I'm excited for.
And we had another new name that was added to that mix, Will Howard from Ohio State, the Ohio State. Let me get it correct because Buckeye fans will get on me. The Ohio State transfer from Kansas State. Listen, I don't care what the stat line says. If you watch this game, you could see the talent that is there with Will Howard and how this offense is going to operate. Judkins and Hendo really didn't have to do much. It was 52-6. Howard 228, 3 touchdowns, no picks, ran the ball 4 times for 18 yards. Jeremiah Smith was the star of the show, no doubt. The true freshman, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns. We will save the Jeremiah Smith talk for down the line because he is not even eligible until 2027. So we're not going to talk about that. But I do want to bring up some of the big dons, the big names that played, and some of the thought, because these are the names, Nussmeier and Miller Moss and Riley Leonard and Connor Weigman. Those are great names. Those are players who can emerge. None of them really looked the Texas A&M Notre Dame game. Maybe it was a defensive battle, but neither of those guys, Weigman nor Riley Leonard, looked. They didn't make my sweatpants tighten up at all. It just was like, oh, this is a very good game. But you talked about some names of players who I call them the value players. It's these quarterbacks and these players who people already are kind of iffy on, don't really like, but they performed well. And one of the names that you did talk about was Drew Allar, who, I mean, he looked like a whole new quarterback from the first couple of years at Penn State. Allar was out there dealing, and it wasn't like he had to do a ton. It wasn't like he threw for 300-400 yards, but it was how comfortable he looked in the pocket. He took off and ran the ball for almost 50 rushing yards, 216, 3 touchdowns. If he continues to play well, whether it's 2025 or 2026, Drew Allar is going to position himself to be a highly drafted quarterback. And I know you think in your mind right now, well, the last big white quarterback, Christian Hackenberg, didn't play out too well. You got to get that bias out of your head. And then another player that I want to put in the sort of Allar name, and again, we know the name. He was supposed to be in the class last year. Quinn Ewers also played well for Texas this weekend versus Colorado State. You see him right there with the no-look pass for a touchdown. Pretty cool stuff to Matthew Golden right there. But Quinn Ewers is also going to be one of those names of anti-favorite players, as well as Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe went out there this weekend. I know it was versus Western Kentucky, but threw the ball well, ran the ball well. Alabama stomped their opponent as they should. Home game. But Jalen Milroe, another intriguing quarterback prospect from 2025. Cannon of an arm. He's going to go out there and run a 4.4, 4.3, 40-yard dash when combine time comes. And he's being coached by Kalen DeBoer. We saw what he was able to do for Michael Penix Jr. And for those people who are not familiar with the Penix story, coming out of Indiana, he was not billed as some surgical passing option. It was more of a dual-threat quarterback. So I think there's some potential there with some of these quarterbacks. So, Scott, I want to start with you because these old names with new games now, I mean, these players, too, help boost up this quote-unquote weak 2025 quarterback class, and we still have not gotten to the 2 big dogs that we'll talk about here shortly.
Yeah, I mean, and I wanted to comment on Will Howard, too, because last year, and I still play in a lot of Devy leagues, but I drafted Kyle McCord in every league, and it didn't end up working out. But the only reason I drafted Kyle McCord was not because I think he's going to separate himself from the pack, was he was the Ohio State starter. It takes a certain level to even get to that, right? So the fact that Will Howard just is starting for Ohio State, they're going to be in the playoff. He's going to have almost every game that's big for him is going to have the center stage, the discussion of, okay, who are his comps? So there's already something that comes with just being the Ohio State quarterback. So that is one that was an easy, he's going to be on the radar. Now, whether he ends up making it or not, whether he declares or not, another story. But I think it's important to kind of look at these through that lens of, that's another easy one that's just all he had to do is look the part, right? Just look the part early, and it's another name on the radar. But yeah, I mean, this is going to be really interesting. There's even 3 or 4 guys that we really haven't seen much from that I'm still excited to see more from. But I think we're going to get to a point where we're halfway through this season, and it's going to be a legitimate contest to be able to guess who are the quarterbacks that are going to be in the mix to be drafted. Because there's going to be some with NIL that are going to go, why would I? We may hear this narrative, right, in like 8 weeks. man, I'm not sure this guy's going to declare because there's so many names in the mix that it almost doesn't make sense for me to come out and be the QB 10 in this class, even if I'm going to go in the 3rd round versus coming out next year in what may be a little shakier 2026 class. So I think we could go from this is a bad QB class to this is one that has what, Jay? 3 or 4 versions of Bo Nix, Michael Penix, like Drake May, like just a bunch of those guys where I don't know if I want to battle out 5 other players that are very similar to me when I can just go back and I can be the starter again at LSU and I'll just come out in 2026 because life's going to be pretty good if you're the starter at LSU for another year. So that's the takeaway. I think we could flip on this class quickly. The only thing I will say is I don't think this will happen. Maybe it's Jalen Milroe. I don't think it's going to be Shedeur. I don't think it's going to be Carson Beck. Will there be seen as a QB in this class that comes into the league that is a Jaden Daniels level game breaker? An Anthony Richardson level fantasy game breaker.
It's
got to be probably Milroe if it happens, right?
Milroe.
It's yeah. If you're looking for one of like a game breaker and being
like a one that your average analyst that doesn't study the prospects as much would go, that guy could be a top 3 QB in a given season. Like that is where I think the fantasy community.
It'd be Jalen Daniels, wouldn't it, from Kansas?
No.
It probably not, but
it's got to be Milroe. I'll say there is one.
Here's why that's a perfect example of a player, because there wasn't a soul this time last year who thought Jaden Daniels would even be a day 1, day 2 pick. Nobody. Find me one reputable source that had Jaden Daniels. I'll give you the whole goddamn month of September. Not even week 1. I vividly remember coming out and saying, man, this dude's going to be a 1st-round pick. And people are you're crazy. You don't know what he's talking about. You're living in La La Land 2020. So all I'm going to say is, and this is what I've been cautioning folks on. We do this right. Like there's a point to this exercise. We're doing this. Oh, there's not going to be this. There's not going to be that until we get there. And there is, and there are, and it is a will. You're like, oh shit, Will Howard did run for 600 yards this year, right? Jackson Dart did run for 500 something yards and is athletic. Oh, Jalen Milroe did improve his passing under Kalen DeBoer. We do this every single year, folks. I don't know who's going to be there in April, but what I will say is the net that I'm casting right now is wide enough to where I'm certain that there will be somebody. I'm certain of the 15 goddamn quarterbacks that we've talked about today, and we haven't spoken on Jackson Dart. We haven't talked about Carson Beck or Shedeur Sanders. That net that will be cast across the 25 landscape, it will yield in return, whether they're top 3 upside or top 10, it will return value at the position. That I'm very confident in.
I do agree with Hunter in the chat. He says it's got to be a guy from a big program. And I do kind of agree with that. Now, most of these guys are, but that's why I like how you talk through the exercise, right? Because it's just as much about people's opinions. And I'm not saying that Quinn 100%. Ewers can't go in the top 10. But I think it's also fair to say what he brings to the table will never yield him to be. He is just ironclad QB1, massive fantasy upside. Like, that's a much harder needle to thread. But Jackson Dart, Will Howard, I think those are 2 that are sneaky to jump into that mix because both are going to be on teams that are going to be in the mix all year. But then I would also say Milroe. So I do agree it's probably those 3 if I had to narrow it down. But also those 3 might not even be the top. Any of them might not be in the top 3 of the class, which is interesting that speaks to the wide net that we're casting, that none of those guys may be in the top 3. Yet we're also saying they could be in the mix to be the QB1 if everything goes right in terms of people's opinions.
And Jay, I'm going to ask you, Jay, because you look at a player like Shedeur Sanders, who is praised for his downfield accuracy, his ability to get the ball out. Like, do you think there's a world to where he is an elite caliber thrower of the football at the next level that can yield the type of fantasy return that quarterbacks who don't run a ton typically produce for us? Do you think Sanders or Beck have that sort of in their arsenal to do. And you see right here, I mean, the ball placement from Shedeur, I don't care if it's versus NDSU. He did it all last season. It's incredible. Do you think these guys are good enough passers to have that type of impact, Jay?
So Shedeur, absolutely, right? I think Shedeur is a player who, like CJ Stroud, plays above the X's and O's, plays above the coordinator, plays above the scheme. He does have Travis Hunter, who you can see on the screen is ridiculous, right? Like the dude's ability is just off the charts, but Shedeur's is as well, right? And I think you even look at Shedeur's ability as a runner, it's underrated because he just chooses not to run. You see a play where he rolls out, avoids the sack, stops so he can throw the ball. And then I love that you brought up Carson Beck because Carson Beck was a player I was excited to watch this season. You know, the first game against Clemson, tough defense. But honestly, Ray, like you hear the comps to Jared Goff, you look at how they looked in the first half, and then you say, well, did he figure it out or did the coaches figure it out how to beat Clemson and how they need to win? And that for me is the biggest conversation with Carson Beck is we know he's probably not going to be this elite fantasy asset even as a thrower of the football, but can he be good enough to where he's worth drafting? Because he's probably going to be a top 10 pick if everything goes right. But if I was betting on a guy to fall out, it would be Carson Beck. I think he's going to be a bit of a game manager. He's going to be a very good one in the way that we don't respect Jared Goff for how good he is as a quarterback. But for fantasy purposes, that's not really going to get it done. So Shedeur, absolutely. I think he's a guy that can be a game breaker the way that CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, these guys are simply just throwers of the football that are surgical ball placement specialists that can deliver for their teams. Beck, the jury is still out for me a little bit. You know, we know that Georgia team is predicated on the run, and ETN will add a ton to the offense, but I think that Beck needs to do a little bit more on his own and less relying on the coaching to really figure it out on offense, because that first half, second half, drastically different, and I think that comes down to coaching.
So when you're looking at the 25 quarterbacks right now, just off the QB class and what we saw in week one, here's what you got as far as potential high-end talents that we need to be aware of for fantasy. You've got Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers. And these are players who are predicted or projected to get some sort of capital, right? I'm not throwing out Castellanos from Boston College. We're not going to do that yet. Drew Allar, I think, is a tier down. I still am going to keep Garrett Nussmeier. A tier below that. I'm going to keep, who was the Miller Moss? Not really in that tier yet. So I think right now when we're looking at an early 2025 big board, I think it's pretty solid that Beck, Sanders, Dart, Milroe, Ewers are in that top 5 for most people. Any dissension there, y'all? Any dissension there?
How do you feel about Dylan Gabriel?
Absolutely not. No. What you should feel better about Bo Nix right now. You should, watching that game, you should be like, damn, Bo Nix might have been okay out there. Yep. It's just interesting listening to the commentators talk about, I was listening to LSU last night, and they were talking about having two first-round receivers in Brian Thomas and Malik. I don't think people understand how impactful it is just having those guys out there. And then when you eliminate that Kyron Lacy looked good and Mason Taylor did his thing, but there's a big drop-off from having Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors out there to, you know, the shell of the receiving core that LSU had last night.
Can I give you one more?
Yes. I mean, are those the 5 that we're thinking about right now? Because I'm trying to put together a little big board for us. I'm going to open up my database. And what you see here is my tiers literally is just based on sentiment. Are there positive sentiments on the player or negative, right? That's all I really care about, whether they're elite. And if there's nothing there, then I don't really gauge what people think about them. But if we had to prioritize this, let's try to build a top 10 out. And I just got one here for everybody. Scott, are we going to put Tet McMillan number 1 on the board right now, just after week 1?
I honestly think you could put 3 or 4 skill players at the top just because people are not sure of the quarterback tiers. So I'm fine putting the skill players that already everybody knows. You can probably put Ollie Gordon up there.
Okay.
I don't know about Hunter and Jeanty, but I think they're right there. But I think you could probably get away with the top 3 or 4 players being non-quarterbacks for now.
Okay, so we've got Tet McMillan. Who else do you want to go? Luther Burden, who didn't do anything this weekend, Jay, but people like Burden. No. Do you want to have him up there?
No. Burden's
Scott,
not making the top
Luther
5.
Burden inside the top 5, yeah or nay?
No, I think you keep it as it is right now. Keep him below Hunter.
Okay, we got Burden below Hunter, and I've got those three as my top 3 receivers in the class. Beck, Sanders, I think Ibuka's got to move down. We got to move Ibuka down.
I think I'd still, and I would move Judkins up.
Okay.
I still think if people had to pick today, they're picking one of the Ohio State running backs ahead of Ashton.
You're taking Judkins over Henderson?
Okay. Okay.
You could sell me 60-40 on either of those, but
over Judkins.
Today, easily, somebody would take an Ohio State running back, whoever has the better season or is seen as the better prospect over Jeanty. That was your point. Yes. Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%.
All right.
Shedeur's got to go at 2, though, for me.
You said who?
Shedeur's got to be 2.
So let me ask you this, Jay.
I'd put Shedeur at 2 right now. No hesitation. I wouldn't put him 1.
I agree with you. I agree with you. He's the QB1. Is he going to be somebody, and Ray, you texted me this like in March. Is there going to be a little dissension at the top of the draft in terms of what teams are there and their opinions on Shedeur? Is that going to have any impact on his draft capital? Meaning, are there going to be teams that go, it is a big commitment to take this guy potentially 101, 102, whatever. I'm just throwing it out there, the polarization of the name Shedeur Sanders, because it has to be brought up, and it's only going to continue to grow. Because I saw the comment in the chat. People don't like Shedeur because of his dad and that his team isn't great.
Oh, God.
But, that shit continues. That continues into draft season. It does. I listen to NFL draft pods with, I'll just throw out the name, Rick Spielman.
Yeah,
right?
Go ahead.
He'll still shit on Marvin Harrison for not testing at the combine. He'll still talk about, I wouldn't draft Shedeur Sanders to lead my team because of this. There are a lot of people in the NFL that still think that way, and it has to be at least mentioned with Shedeur because his draft process is going to look different than a lot of these others, right? It's going to be different, and we already know it.
I don't, for the life of me, I don't get how you can punish a kid, a young man who, from all accounts, outside of a few transfers that were disgruntled, spare me the white knight bullshit that he's too mean to his team. Have any of y'all even played competitive sports? Kids are mean. Who cares? Toughen up. I see there are real, quote-unquote, analysts out there. Shedeur's just a bad kid. Get the fuck out of here with that. Excuse my French. You don't know the man. Too. Yes, stop this. He's a bad guy. He's mean to his teammates. I'm watching after the damn NDSU game. All they're doing, shaking his hand. He's smiling, taking pictures with folks. Get out of here and spare me that he can't win. Everybody knows Colorado was a walking trash can of a team. One of the worst programs in the country. And you think that in 1 year they're going to they didn't make a bowl game. The goalpost movement for bad bias is glaring. And when you spot that inside of a take, a community, and analysts, fade them, man. That ain't what we do. If I'm wrong, damn it, we come on here, JRich, Bo Nix looks pretty damn good, right?
Yep.
Not finna kill. You're killing this kid off of what? You don't like his dad? You don't like the way they do things? Man, come on, dog. That's ridiculous. That to me is ridiculous, and I don't listen to any of that stuff. It's crazy talk to me. Back to this board.
Now, Scott, I do want to make one comment, though, about Scott's point about owners and player personnel, about drafting Shedeur Sanders, because the biggest reason you draft Shedeur Sanders, Ray, we've always talked about it.
Count that money, man. Count that fucking money, man.
He's going to bring in revenue, and he's going to sell jerseys, and he's going to sell tickets, and that is the number one reason why you draft Shedeur Sanders. If you're an owner, you want him because he will make you a ton of money even before he ever hits the field.
All right, so Jay, you've got Shedeur inside this top 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move him over Hunter. I'm going to put Shedeur here over Travis Hunter, and he'll be 4. I'll tell you, my big 3 quarterbacks, the quarterbacks that I'm more interested on from this class after week 1 are Sanders, it's Dart, it's Milroe. It's Beck. Those are the 4 that I'm really kind of eyeing. Those are the 4 that either from a CJ Stroud, in quotes, level accuracy, efficiency of a passer, or the ability to throw the ball and give you some, I'm not going to say Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels rushing stuff. Milroe, 100%. Jackson Dart is more tactical scrambler to me. I can see him being more in that Dak Prescott mold when he takes off the run, but he's very good. And it's not Jackson Dart's fault that Caleb Williams transferred to USC. So he's doing it. He did it at USC and he's doing it in the SEC. That is one where I think people will come around to him a lot more. Who else? What other names are we going to put inside that top 10? We've got Burden, we've got Hunter, we've got Dart, we've got Beck, we've got Milroe. Right there, I think that's 10 names right off the rip inside of that top 10 big board. But just look down the board. Isaiah Bond.
I'd probably put Henderson and Hampton in there. Bond is probably going to make it with how good his season could be this year for Texas. Like
Hampton's up there.
Probably going to have a really good season.
I think Singleton has got to be up there. Tez Johnson's another name that's starting to move up. You got Trey Harris, Drew.
I think
Allar.
the biggest losers of the week are a lot of the other receivers because everyone is so excited about the running backs and the quarterback options that are available.
Yeah.
I mean, you're staring at a guy like Emeka Egbuka and go, he's probably going to be a top 50 pick. Man. But at what point do you go, I have to have that I can't replicate with how many other guys currently around? You know what I mean? Like that's where I think the receivers class is going to be interesting because, Ray, let me ask you this. Outside of Tet McMillan and Hunter, probably if he continues and plays receiver, et cetera, maybe how many other receivers would you put in the potential, not going to happen, but the potential of, and let's use like Brian Thomas Jr. this year as the
one
bar.
Right now.
Okay. Like aside from Tet, clearly above that Brian Thomas line, like top 20 or better, potential to be the lead dog on a team. How many others? Zero,
including I know people love Luther Burden. I talked about it on this channel. I've got to see more. Let me tell you what I did last night, Scott. I can't do this whole thing that I've been on, talking about the type of routes that matter, the type of routes that score fantasy points. I'm watching the game last night, and as exciting as Zachariah Branch looked, all I kept thinking about all last night, every play was a screen or something short. And I just know, having done the research and analyzed the data of which routes score fantasy points in the NFL, it ain't bubble screens and shallow crossers. If you're not running downfield stuff, it is scary trying to predict that to the next level. So when I'm looking at the receivers in this class, yes, I like Kyron Lacy. Trey Harris looked good. Xavier Restrepo from Miami looked great. Yep. There's one guy and one guy only that I look at and say that is a dominant from day one. You line him up on the outside and go get it. It's Tet McMillan. There's nobody else right now after him that I even put in this. Burden and him, they weren't in the same tier, and they're not in this. They are even Travis Hunter, because he's going to play both ways. So he's going to be limited when you have to split duties. If he committed to receiver, I think Hunter could be there. But it's Tet McMillan, and that's it, Scott.
So we might be looking at a class where the receivers are, I don't want to say the afterthoughts, but we do get a class full of Jordan Addison types, right? Where it's just like they're good, they get the capital, but they're not seen as assets you have to have and you couldn't get elsewhere. Interesting. Very interesting.
It's going to be interesting. I think this class, when you just look at the names, and we didn't talk about some of the ancillary. Donovan Edwards was awful. He didn't do anything. Evan Stewart, people love the name. He didn't do a damn thing. Tez Johnson, Katron Allen, Jaden Knott played well. You got Damian Martinez, Berrien Brown, Bach Vandergriff from Kentucky. We didn't get to see Trevor Etienne. We talked a little bit about Jonah Coleman, Mason Terry. We didn't even touch on the tight ends. I'm telling you right now, and I'm going to say it again as we sign off, the enthusiasm and demand at certain points for this 2025 class will be at a height that we have not seen in a decade. People are going to want these picks, and if you can't see it, like if you can't feel it, it's palpable. You can taste it in the air that people are excited for this class. And here's what people like to do more than anything else, Scott. The hell with being right or wrong. This has nothing to do with fantasy football. It can be news. It can be fantasy football. People want to be first. People are searching for that next, who is going to be the Joe Burrow that comes out of nowhere or the Jaden Daniels. It's going to take a couple of weeks, but mark my word. And what's going to change it and impact it is what's about to happen on Thursday, the NFL. Once people see, oh, shit, that Will Levis ain't that good. That Baker Mayfield is a pumpkin. That Geno Smith's not going to be the answer. People are going to start to pivot. What can we get? Gardner Minshew ain't it. Can't wait for Shedeur. You know what I'm saying?
Baker
Bryce
Mayfield.
Young ain't it. Can't wait to get Jalen Milroe. Whatever it is, that combined with the enthusiasm for college football, the fragility of the quarterback position in the league now, it is going to create a perfect environment and a perfect storm for the value of these picks to really, really, raise up as we go through this season. So, Scott, any final takes, man? Thank you for jumping on with us, man. I know this is a little different for you waking up with us. You're normally in the chat. But any final takeaways? Give us some actionability here. Like with this, as we watch this and we follow these players and names start to emerge, what are you going to be doing, Scott? What are you going to be doing in Dynasty with the enthusiasm around this class and these picks as it continues to gain steam?
Well, I think the first thing is we can operate under the assumption that you're making macro bets. And if you watch this show, if you agree with what Ray is saying, then that's already the bet that you're aligned with. You think these picks are going to be extremely valuable. So I would challenge everybody to go out and try to really get a pulse on how your league typically values picks. And understand that this is going to be a class that, like Ray is saying, there's going to be a lot of angles to be excited about. But I do think it's important to understand, okay, if I know that I'm in 15 leagues, I need to have an understanding of the picks that I hold in those leagues and where they're aligned with the markets that I'm in amongst those leagues. Because I do think it's important to know, okay, I have 4 first-round picks over here. I've been collecting those. I've been collecting them because that's what Ray's been telling me to do. It's made sense for you to move off a couple assets to get a future first for the flexibility. But then I go, that's a league where nobody really likes draft picks. Like, you really have to have that analysis because I do think ultimately there is going to be that point where you have to answer, what am I willing to sell these picks for? The hype only matters if you can actually make something happen with the picks. So really kind of start digging into that, figuring out if there's other teams that are collecting those picks, if there's other teams that typically will chase the hype on a guy like Jalen Milroe or Luther Burden, whoever the name is. We talked about 50 different names today that it could be, which is good for the value of the picks. But I think just understand your league economy, because if you can't use draft picks to leverage this excitement that we're talking about, and all you're doing is just, hey, I'll just draft this running back with the 107 and I hope he's great. Like, that is not typically a winning strategy in Dynasty. So just understand where you hold your picks and what's your plan with them. Develop a plan. If it fits your roster, because you need to draft 4 rookie running backs next year, then fine. But I think it's important to really do that analysis and go, there probably will be a point during the season you may want to move off of some 25 picks in some leagues for that reason, because the prospect value in that league isn't as high as in another one. So can I get a championship winning piece during the season? And then other leagues, you want to hold on to them. So just do some research. It's still early in the year, but really try to have a better understanding of your league economy on the picks so you can take advantage of everything that we've talked about today.
Appreciate it, Scott. Jay, any takeaways from you? I mean, it's 1 week, right? But you see it. You see the hype. You see the new faces and the new accounts that are retweeting college football stuff from a fantasy perspective. What are your – I want to do this every week, Jay. Mondays are probably going to be
Wednesday
all NFL.
shows, yeah.
Mondays are going to be NFL because that's the reaction. That's the big stuff. But I think Wednesdays, I want to reflect on just a heat check, an in-season heat check with how people are feeling, because I promise you, people are going to be like, man, give me that Tet McMillan. Oh, week 3 of the NFL season, and Rome Odunze sitting there as the clear 3rd, 4th target. Give me that Tet. I need to figure out. That's the application. When you're in season, Scott, you're talking about there will be windows. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It happens every year. This player ain't getting any work. I need to get out. Brian Thomas ain't doing a damn thing. Rome ain't doing nothing. Daniel Jones is a pumpkin, and even though Malik Neighbors is getting 15 targets, he's stinking it. Just watch the crazy shit that's going to happen throughout the season. Jay, give us some takeaways, man.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, and to kind of build off your point, Scott, is to really, if you need 4 running backs, okay, that's great. But is there 4 spots where a running back can actually go that can produce for fantasy football? Because I look back to 2017. Everyone talks about 2017. We did the same thing in 2020. And I remember, Ray, we used to talk about 2020 and we'd say, wow, Cam Akers, Jonathan Taylor, Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming out of nowhere. But at the same time, you looked across the NFL and you say, well, how many spots is there for these players to actually start? And that is exactly what happened in 2020. We were highly touting all these running backs. We're like, oh, they're going to get the draft capital. They're going to be producing for fantasy. But there wasn't any available spots for these guys to play and beat out the backs that were already on these rosters. So whether you're talking quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, there's going to be spots for them to play. But especially for running backs and quarterbacks, they have to have an actual place to play in the NFL. You can't tout 10 running backs to be first and second round picks because there's not that many starting spots in the NFL. So just keep that in mind when you're trading and making these types of decisions, is that you're going to be excited for a lot of guys, but like we always talk about, maybe 2 or 3 of them are actually going to get a draft spot, and with the capital and the situation to where they can matter in year 1. I think that's the biggest mistake people make, is they are too in on too many guys and there's not enough spots available in the NFL. So just be mindful of that as you're going through your drafts.
And Mog's trying to make us work too much, man. Mog's wants us to do a goddamn
Mog
week
wants
by
to pay
week.
for it.
Hey, I mean,
let's do it, right?
I enjoy it though, right? Because that's how you like tracking the stuff weekly to really kind of see the ebbs and flows and that market volatility. It's something that people don't really do. We look at a lot of times in fantasy, Scott, we get to the end of the season and we say that player busted, that player face planted, that player stunk, that player has no value. But what really happened is there were pockets throughout the 18 weeks where that player was up and down. Very rarely is it just you suck and you just stay down there. Everybody knows that. You're not bitching about that at the end of the day. But I think really watching the weekly either rise or fall in the perception of these players will help us once we get to the rookie draft process. Hear me out, folks. We get to week 17 and the sentiment analysis for Quinn Ewers has just been bearish the whole time. I don't really know. Once you get there, like you're going to be able to use how people felt and thought about those players to your advantage once the time comes to actually manipulate and sell the rights to that pick, or if you have an early draft and you have the player on your roster. We're going to do this every week, and I'm pretty sure, I'm not telling Scott what he's going to do on the show, but I'm pretty sure there's going to come a point in time in the season where he talks about the rookie pick value and the perceived perception of these players and the value. Like, we are going to track this shit every single week. Inside the database, I'm going to be doing like some weekly things, and we're going to aggregate everything at the end. It's going to be really cool stuff that we're doing in the community. So appreciate everybody jumping in on an unscheduled, impromptu wake up this morning to just cover week 1 of college football, which was incredible. Boston College versus Florida State tonight. But make sure you wake up bright and early with Jay and I on Wednesday morning as we get into the NFL season, baby. We got Chiefs, we got Ravens. Jay, I think I actually got a baseball game that day. So nice. I'll probably be coming in hot in the evening time. But it's going to be a fun year. Excited about everything that's happening at DD Fantasy Football. Content from Scott, myself, JRich, Discord exclusive content. Go to ddfantasyfootball.com, sign up for the website, get access to the community, and let's have some fun this season. Appreciate everybody being here. That's the show, Jay. That's the show, baby. Good stuff. Scott, shit, man.
Happy Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day, everybody. We out of this thing. Love
y'all.
Happy
birthday.
And happy birthday, old GQ. See y'all on Wednesday, baby. We out. Almost. Peace.